Now we're having 17,000 articles, okay? Not that this is the entire field, it's probably bigger than this, okay? But there's things that are relevant and things that are not relevant. So, you know, yeah, you can say, okay, well, I'm not going to read, you know, 17,000 articles, okay? But from those, you, as compared to, you know, beforehand we had like a couple of dozen articles in this narrow space, right? Now we have 17,000 articles, and it's a matter of like, well, which kind of blocks do we like throw out, okay, that are not necessarily relevant? And that's what you can start to do also with the Boolean search, right? So, so for example, one way, if you have, okay, when you have a very large space like this, okay, one way to do a very initial narrowing down, I say initial, okay, let's say, all right, let's just look at the review articles. At least it's only 1,000. It's like 1,000 articles that reviewed this field, okay, right? Now, but again, we're a bit of a higher level here, okay, so. Huh?
We need review for review.
Yeah, we need reviews for reviews, but that's exactly what you're doing, right? You are trying, because you know your question is guided by the innovation process and is relatively unique of what you're trying to do, okay? Sometimes more specific, sometimes less, okay?
Is it possible to add robotics?
Hold on, don't be impatient, you know. So a systematic review of the effectiveness of whole community intervention and socioeconomic position. So, okay, let's try the following. Before we do that, okay, let's go to an advanced search and try, this is the use of the advanced search aspect. So, okay, this actually records the types of things that I searched for before, okay? Now, I want to add robotics, okay, but where do I want to add robotics? Let's say, okay, I take the set number 2. We're talking about outcome. Measure and outcome is in there, right? It's not the whole thing, it's not the process of educating, okay? Usually, I mean, it's in there too, I'm sure, okay? But then, so we say take set number 2 and let's look for something else. Let's look for engineering, okay? And let's look for engineering just to show you this, right? So in this case, so I'm just going to say, this is not the smartest way of doing this, okay? But I'm just going to say I want to have absolutely engineering in the title of the paper, not in the abstract, not anywhere else. I wanted to have it in the title, okay? So. Okay, and then you could say, oh, I only want book chapters, I only want da 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 da, right? So you can start to see the usefulness of the database approach as compared to just the associative approach, right? So, okay, so we've got 81 of those with it in the title, right? Okay, so I don't know what, but this is like very recent. So, you know, you see like, okay, so people have been developing over a long time, you know, sort of education like measurement standard. How do you, you know, assess it? How do you assess the outcome, right? But you want to do this on scientific evidence. It's the same like as in medicine, right? One clinical study, it doesn't matter how large it is, it's not going to really tell you anything. Okay, in medicine you can only ever tell anything at all, what is called like on the basis of the totality of scientific evidence, right? All scientific knowledge that we have, okay, so you have to look at all the, but you can't do that, so there are systematic ways of doing that. We'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, I want to move on a little bit to a couple of other resources, but, you know, just to sort of show you that this sort of space exists, okay? And you can do the same thing, you know, now with educational developmental psychology and so on, but you know, some of that will be in there, you know, so this is not enough, this field, okay, you have to also like sometimes understand the basics, okay, some will reference it, some will not. Okay, and you can see that, you know, fields, very large fields that have been combining, like I showed you with the Harvard thing. Okay, that can be like people can work for decades. Okay, in different corners of a similar problem, but never really connect. Right. So, but in innovation, it's your responsibility with respect to your innovative idea. You are, remember how we said it was question driven, okay, right? Innovation is about the art of asking the right questions at the right time and changing the questions. It is not about just finding answers. You have to do that too, efficiently, of course, okay? But there's millions of people in the world that can find answers efficiently, okay? Sometimes more expensively, sometimes less expensively, sometimes quicker, sometimes better, whatever, okay? But we don't have a problem with people finding answers to questions, okay? We have a problem of people asking the right questions, okay? The questions that are useful and ultimately they're useful for society, so innovation, right? So, and this is really, you know, again, you apply your process, your questions, you know, like that's the quality of the questions, and then, you know, what you look for, okay, without spending too much time necessarily in the details, even just a cursory look will probably refine your question, saying like, oh, there is these 15 other elements that I have to add to the technology, and I actually had no idea that anybody you know, 2,000 people worked on this already, you know, like, and it might kind of be relevant, you know. So you get this idea, right? So this is what, when Gene said, you know, like in the pre-internet days, this was a lot more difficult. You actually literally had to talk to these people. You had to go. That's why Bell Labs also was in a concentrated way so efficient, because you had Nobel Prize winner after Nobel Prize, and not just the Nobel Prize, but really, really, really good people. And you know, and like, and you could just go down the hall, and you know, and this guy invented the CO2 laser, and da 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 da. You know, there's a high concentration of that. Okay. In the beginning of your innovation process, but as Gene said, you need to have eventually also those transactional experiences. You know, they're absolutely critical. But in the beginning of the innovation process, now you have sort of a virtual way, okay, of replicating, of accessing the state of knowledge of the world. Okay, but that is too much, and it's not useful unless, you know, you filter it and interpret it and guide it and make sense of it, okay, within the innovation process, okay, because you want to get something to work, you want to get an embodiment, a useful embodiment in the marketplace, not just yet another scientific paper where, you know, you are on every conference in the, you know, that happens during the year of that kind of subgroup of scientific study, right? So let me let's switch gears to something else now. Let's have a look at some medical stuff. So we can obviously do the same thing, you know, for now. Switch gears to just take the neurorehabilitation project, okay, as an example. So neurorehabilitation, so you're going to be able to, I mean, we can quickly do this, of course. Let's use, well, this is going to be interesting how many papers there are. So I would start with, this is where the filtering will, you know, become very important. So I would say stroke and rehabilitation, right? And we'll just start with that. How many? What do you guess? 17,000. Yeah, okay, that's pretty good, yeah? 20,000 papers, okay? Right. So, you know, so 1,200 review articles. Okay, so let's see. So we can also refine it here. Like this is not the Boolean thing. With the Boolean thing, you can be much more specific. But let's say with, what's the word? What's the next critical word?
Biofeedback.
Biofeedback, okay? Now you may find out that this is the most, like, this is the term that everybody uses. I'm assuming it is, okay? Or you might find that there might be another word that people use, right?
It's the best one.
Huh?
It's the best one.
It's the best one? Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's do that.
have a mistake.
Oh, do I? Yeah, it did tell me that. Yeah, see, this is the other thing that, you know, in Google it's very forgiving with respect to your spelling mistakes, okay? Here it isn't. But that's a good thing, because the thing is it's actually also very precise matches. You get very accurate results and not sort of associated results. Okay, 240 articles, 41 articles. Okay, so, and 36 in neurosciences, clinical neurology is 27 articles, and so on. So, let's go to review articles again, right? Because they give us a broader view. 30 review articles. Find that, 2 book chapters. Okay, the application of cycling and cycling combined with feedback in the rehabilitation of stroke patients, a review. A systematic, so you know, okay, so that's feet, not arms, but hey, you know. And that's relatively new, right? I mean, it's from February this year. As a review article, that's relatively new, right? Now, one other thing that you can do, by the way, in this space is, you know, different journals have sometimes different ratings, right? Some things are, like, in medicine, for example, New England Journal of Medicine is, like, you know, way up there, okay? I mean, that's very, very difficult to publish in this, okay? So you can sometimes, if you have to decide, like, what am I going to read, what am I going to read first, okay? You can, this is the other dimension, you can, if you know your field very well, you can go by author and, you know, group and what kind of research they've done and so on and so forth. But you can also go by the type of journals sometimes, you know, the one that tends to be, because every academic, there's a rating system, every academic tries to get things into review articles, into articles that are, you know, of the highest sort of quality of journal.
Okay, this question is, okay, we have a project, we have our understanding of project, we have a round of base of knowledge.
Yes.
And what is the set of good questions? Okay, what is our view of this information? For example, can we use it? Okay, is it the same? Maybe there is some set of the question from this scope of which we can analyze this big database related to the project.
Yeah, so this is like the question can only come from the innovation process. Okay, the innovation process tells you the question, and then, you know, in this set you start to look for the answer if somebody's done it. If nobody has done it, I mean, it's not about like whether somebody has done the innovation.
The question is somebody's done it. First question, maybe. Okay, we are looking.
No, but it's not the same thing. Okay, like here is what happens with patents. Okay, like the very first time you look for patents. Okay, there's so many out there, right? The very first time you go like, oh, somebody's done it. Somebody's done my innovative idea. There it is. Okay. Until you start, and you know, remember how we went with Gene through the patent workshop and how to read claims, until you actually really understand this in detail and exactly what it covers and what it doesn't cover and so on and so forth, okay? And what's prior art and so on and so forth. And then you realize, so first of all, if nobody has done anything like you are thinking of, nobody, okay? Then there's a very, very good chance that is nonsense. Because, you know, statistically speaking, there's millions of people, tens, hundreds of millions of people, you know, doing stuff, okay? And they're all trying to add knowledge, you know, and try to, you know, and try to create things and whatnot, or make business or whatever, right? So if it's something that's so virgin, I mean, it could be theoretically, I mean, maybe, okay, right? But if nobody has even tried this, okay, or something in this field,
okay, first
you know,
question, is it virgin? First question.
What? Is it?
First question maybe.
Is it virgin? Well, it, you know, or you might have just like looked for the wrong words. Okay, like, but the thing, what I'm saying is like, if you find like nobody has done anything like that, that might not be a good sign. Okay, because certainly other people have had the idea, right? So usually like what happens is that, oh, you know, this is exactly, you know, you have this feeling, oh, it's exactly what I want to do. Like, oh, no, it isn't. Okay, the chances are the details matter so much. Right? You know, the whole, and you're going to find, if you look closely enough, you're going to find probably maybe 100 patents that look like on initial glance, you know. But obviously they can't coexist at the same time if they're all the same thing, you know, and they're not going to be, right? So, so there's always this like sort of, when you do this for the first time, the first shock, okay, you know, and then you start to go into the details and really understand it, and you realize, Oh, okay. Oh, that's what they're doing. Okay, that's protected. Oh, right. They're only doing it in this region. It's only, and so on and so forth, right? And then, you get to this level. So, but the point is, as I said with the oxygen thing, okay, people have to stand on each other's shoulders. Nobody can do this alone, right? You have to, and if nobody has produced any knowledge in that area, right, then it's relatively hard, right? Gene obviously was pivotal in strained silicon and all that, but he's not the first one who has worked on lattice mismatch problems in compound semiconductors. Okay, obviously there was lots of work of that before, or silicon surface reconstruction, or for silicon surface reconstruction. Of course, people have worked on this, because very, very relevant. So let's look at this one. So this is a review, interestingly enough, okay, of rehabilitation of stroke patients in this particular setting, right? And that one, cites 87 articles, right? And there's other ones and so on and so forth. But I want to show you something else. I want to show you, so you get the usefulness of that kind of database, right? So in the medical space, so for example, there can be, depending on the field that you're in, there can be a lot of important information in other places like regulatory type environment, okay? So let's have a look at the FDA, okay, the Food and Drug Administration, okay? So I don't know, okay, but like for example in the US, and there's an equivalent in Europe, right, and so on, is in the US there is something called the CFR, okay, which is the Code of Federal Regulations, okay? All regulations are in there. So, Congress makes laws, but they're usually very generic, okay? And then it's a matter of, the administration to actually implement them, okay? And they do this in the CFR, okay? And Europe has the equivalent, right? And Article 21 of the CSR, that covers the entire Food and Drug Administration space, okay? So, and this one, and the European one is also very well organized. I'm just, going to use this one, a bit more familiar with it, okay? So, what you can start with is, you go to ECFR, okay? So it's the electronic version of this, all right? And so, very simple interface, okay? Generic provisions, 3 is the president, okay? 4 is accounts, 5 is administrative personnel, whatever, okay? So, customs duties, 21, food and drugs, okay? And there's millions of pages in there, okay? So, but it's also very well organized. Now, we don't know, so this is where you go into the actual thing, but you don't know exactly what kind of where we are here, right? So, so generally speaking, this type of device, the first thing that we probably need to find out, sort of, how is this regulated, okay? Because not just because you have to get it by regulation, but it'll tell you a lot about this, okay? And it'll tell you a lot about what is it required to bring it to market. This is implementation, okay? But it also tells you something about the science that you have to meet, in order to make certain claims and qualify, okay? Like for example, in this space, the question is what kind of class of medical devices? You're familiar with medical device classes? Okay, so there's, let's start here. Now, the class are like class 1, class 2, class 3. It depends on like class 1 medical devices. So here, we'll look at the overview, okay? Classify. So the FDA is very good in, having a lot of information out there. So, okay, so the FDA has established classifications for approximately 1,700 different generic, not specific, generic types of devices grouped into 16 medical specialties referred to as panels. Each of these generic types of devices is assigned to one of three regulatory classes, that's why we have classes, right? Based on the level of control necessary to assure the safety and effectiveness of the device. Okay, so if you want to bring a device, medical device to market, you have to ensure both safety and effectiveness. It has to actually do what you say it does. It has to be useful. Okay. By the way, do you know why the FDA exists in the U.S.?
To get the drug access to the market to regulate.
No, the story is like, have you ever heard of the American term a snake oil salesman? Okay, a snake oil salesman, you say this commonly, right? Like it's like a sleazy salesman, you know, like somebody who like, you know, like, okay, so it's a snake oil salesman. Actually, it relates to the exact origin of the FDA, okay, because in the 1910s or so, okay, when the railroads were built in the West, there was a lot of immigration from China, okay, and a lot of railroad construction, and the Chinese immigrants brought with them also some of their traditional medicines, and you know, one of those was like a snake oil for, you know, against arthritis. Obviously, we now know that arthritis, okay, is what? What kind of problem is arthritis? Where does arthritis come from?
For everything.
No. Arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis.
It's with the joints and the problem with joints.
Yeah, exactly. But where does it come from? What's the reason for it? Why? You know, like, you know, people say like, oh, they've got arthritis. You know, a lot of people. But what is the origin of that? Huh?
That's from.
What? Electrical? No. It's an autoimmune disease.
Autoimmune?
Okay, it's your body produces antibodies that fights your own body. Okay, it's an autoimmune disease just like multiple sclerosis, or where, you know, like the insulation of your wiring in the central nervous